A lot of lives that were lost this past weekend. More than 100 people, in fact, died in road accidents across the country, all nationwide, with at least 46 people in the Eastern Cape alone. On the same weekend, the world was shocked to learn that a reported 65 girls were killed in an accident while travelling to the annual Reed dance in Swaziland. In light of these accidents, we are speaking to Advocate Makosini Msibi from the Road Traffic Management Corporation on road safety and carnage in South Africa. Advocate, thank you so much for being with us here on the programme. This couldn't have been a good weekend for you. I mean, just listening to these statistics and the amount of accidents, it was devastating.
Good morning, Leanne, as well as the listeners. Indeed, one has to borrow from Charles Dickinson's words. It was the worst of time, it was the best of time for us. This is one of the saddest moments as the transport fraternity to undergo such strenuous and agonizing period where we lose lives on our roads, which of course could have been avoided.
Yeah. I mean, I think let's talk about how they could have been avoided. What do you feel could have been done differently?
Leanne, if you look in terms of the accidents that, in particular, the Eastern Cape accidents, where the bus has killed more than 36 passengers, as well as the taxi that has killed 10 passengers. So you're talking about 46 in two separate instances. And if you look into the major causes, while we're still investigating, but we're certain that some of the issues that could have contributed to such accidents, one, it's speeding, it could be the roadworthiness of the vehicles, it could be fatigue, and indeed, it could be the capabilities of our drivers. If you look in terms of what is happening currently in our country, the human element, in particular, the attitude of the drivers, leaves much to be desired. But there are also some other factors that we're currently dealing with, which leads to the fact as to how do our drivers acquire their driver's licenses. We know that there is a scourge of fraud and corruption that is taking place at our DLTCs. And indeed it is, of course, a human element where South Africans have lost their passion, have lost their culture, where they will go out and buy these licenses and come into our roads and drive. But if you look in terms of the number of accidents that we had over the weekend, we're talking about 110 crashes. And if you look in terms of these crashes, one of the major contributory factors are the light motor vehicles. If you look in terms of the statistics in Gauteng, Western Cape, even in Limpopo, you'll then have a proportionate allocation of the fact that it's most motorists were traveling, being two in the vehicle or one in the vehicle. But indeed, we have been on record that we're going to be mounting a very serious campaign because we have done almost everything. We have educated our people. We have conscientized our people in relation to the fact of creating some awareness. We have also intensified the law enforcement.
One thing you haven't touched on, because at this point all we've been talking about is the drivers and the human element behind this. Let us not ignore the fact that some of our roads are in the most appalling conditions, Advocate. So let's focus on that for a little bit. How do you believe the current state of our roads are, particularly where we're talking the Eastern Cape? I mean, as one example, people and commuters have been complaining about these roads for years.
Well, Leanne, it's a fact that South African roads, most of the South African roads are of good quality. I'm talking of the national roads, I'm talking of the freeways. And if you look in terms of the number of accidents that take place in our freeways, in our national roads, it's because of the state of the road, and which will, of course, inspire you. When you're traveling on the smooth road, you lose concentration simply because you believe that the state of the road allows you to deal with this matter. But let me turn also to the rural areas. If you look into the road where the 36 people have died, it was a gravel road, it was a steep road, and with most curves. But what is more comforting is that the Eastern Cape government had recently re-gravelled the road. We're not taking it away from the fact that it's a gravel road. But what does a gravel road mean to you and me as well as the motorist? I must exercise extreme caution. I must drive very carefully. And indeed, when you're driving during the inclement weather or on the gravel road, you need to be extra cautious. But we should also understand it is on those bases that in the Eastern Cape we're focusing intensely on the roadworthiness of the vehicle. We'll be tearing that vehicle apart to look whether there were mechanical faults, because in our own assessment, the state of the road, where the accident precisely has taken place, there was nothing wrong with the road surface.
Okay.
Yes, we agree, we will not shy away from the fact that some of the roads needs serious attention. But where these two have happened, it's not the case.
Okay. All right. We have to leave it there for now. But I'm going to give you 30 seconds, and that's all I can give you, to tell me what it is you're going to be doing, because you said you are really going to enforce the law now, and you've tried to educate drivers. It's not working. What's going to happen now?
Well, Leanne, we're now going to ensure that we step out the law enforcement 24/7. We're now going to be deploying all our law enforcement for 24 hours a day and for 7 days. But we will also be uprooting corruption, fraud and corruption in our testing stations. We have engaged the Department of Justice to review the legislation, in particular to reclassify reckless and negligent driving, as well as driving under the influence of liquor as Schedule 5 offenses. What does Schedule 5 offenses mean? We're now saying when we arrest you, you'll then have to spend 7 days behind bars before you can apply for bail. But we're also then saying, let's bring a mandatory minimum sentence. Once you are convicted of reckless or negligent driving, or even driving under the influence of liquor, the minimum sentence should not be less than 2 years without an option of the fine spending behind bars. This is what we're beginning to inculcate and of course, canvass with the Department of Justice that we deal with this matter, because we can't afford such a scourge of accidents on our road.
We certainly can't. Advocate Makosini Msebi, thank you very much for talking to us. The CEO of the Road Traffic Management Corporation. Absolutely zero tolerance on the roads. 24/7 policing is what you can expect on the roads. Do not break the rules. That's the warning that's been given to you. All right, let's take a break. More after this. Stay tuned.